U.S. ups the ante in the Persian Gulf. Rhode Island launches an air assault of its own to combat some potentially deadly pests. And meet the third candidate for Senate in what many consider a two-man race. Good evening, everyone. I'm Roy Hobbs.
And I'm Margie Reedy. The White House says it means business.
But what will it take for Saddam Hussein to get the message? Well, the Pentagon is showing just how far it will go to keep the Iraqi president in line. Reporter Skip Lozier has the latest.
We're not quite at the point of making a decision to go to war with the guy, says a key Clinton administration official of Iraq, Saddam Hussein, but it's close to that.
Iraq air defense crews are playing some kind of a game. They will very soon learn that we are not playing games.
Not only is Saddam Hussein rebuilding the missile sites hit by U.S. cruise missiles in the expanded southern no-fly zone last week, but Wednesday, Saddam's military fired a surface-to-air missile at 2 U.S. F-16s patrolling the northern no-fly zone and missed, probably because the Iraqis only turned on their tracking radar for about 2 seconds, not long enough to guide their missile to its targets, and not long enough for the U.S. planes to lock on to the Iraqi mobile missile launcher.
I think we're on the line, and I think it's a matter of hours before we actually start taking out some targets, but with different kinds of munitions than we've been using.
Next time, the U.S. will hit Iraq with more than just cruise missiles. 8 F-117 stealth fighters used so effectively during the beginning of the Gulf War are on their way towards the Persian Gulf, where Kuwait has given the U.S. permission to base them. They can deliver the so-called bunker busters, powerful 2,000-pound laser-guided bombs that can penetrate through heavy concrete before exploding. Also in the mix, those high-flying giant B-52 bombers, some of them now based on Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean.
We mean what we say. We did hit him once last week. We are quite able to do that again.
President Clinton has already received a number of military options from the Pentagon, and once all the elements are in place, the only thing the U.S. military will need is Mr. Clinton's order to execute. In Washington, I'm Skip Lozier, UPN 38 Prime News.
And Saddam Hussein says he will no longer honor what he calls the imaginary no-fly zones.
Think of it as a giant can of Raid sprayed over an entire town. The move was meant to protect residents of westerly Rhode Island from potentially deadly mosquitoes, but people are worried it may have added to the health risk. UPN 38's Cara Biratiri reports.
The planes were right overhead. You could see them dropping the stuff, and the kids were getting covered with it.
Mike Bookatop couldn't believe what he saw as he stood at the bus stop with his daughter.
Children are looking up. They're trying to scramble to get into cars or under cover. And the parents got a little alarmed.
But that wasn't the only place kids got doused with insecticide. A few miles away, kids going to the Bradford school also got hit.
There were indeed some children waiting for buses that received some spray, and their parents picked them up and took them home and bathed them. In fact, one whole bus we bathed. The children washed their hands and their faces when they got to school.
Mosquitoes carrying the EEE virus were first discovered here in the Chapman Pond area. The state had planned to spray here earlier, but weather conditions forced delays. Finally, the time was right, but officials with the Department of Environmental Management say they had no intention of spraying over populated areas. State officials say the wind could have carried the spray to areas they didn't intend to cover, but school officials wish they had a little more warning.
Certainly it was a surprise to me this morning. I would have closed last night. In other words, had anyone indicated to me that there may have been these kinds of threats, I would have closed.
The mosquito insecticide called resmethrin may cause rashes or asthma attacks in people with allergies, but is not carcinogenic. Bookatop only hopes the next time he gets the chance to follow the safety recommendation. In westerly Rhode Island, Cara Biratiri, UPN 38 Prime News.
And a heads up, spraying over populated areas is expected to continue tomorrow, but environmental officials say they're trying to provide as much advanced warning as possible.
A tearful courtroom apology from a drunk driver involved in a deadly accident. 59-year-old Leah Krause will spend at least 7 years in jail after pleading guilty to involuntary manslaughter charges in Brockton today. Daniel Sampson was walking home to his new wife when he was struck and killed in Whitman last December. Krause told the victim's family she wished it had been her to die on that day.
He may have been the last person to see 17-year-old Brandy Sullivan of Tewksbury alive. Police say a man between 18 and 27 years old with a thin build, curly brown hair was seen driving with Sullivan before her death last July. The man is not considered to be a suspect, but he is wanted for questioning. Sullivan's body was found in the woods of Wilmington last month. Anyone with information is asked to please call the police. Still no word on whether classes will resume tomorrow after a fire at the Tri-County Vocational High School in Franklin. Flames broke out this afternoon shortly after regular classes had ended for the day. No word on what started the fire. The building inspector has the final say on when the school can reopen.
Hurricane Hortense is heading for the U.S. and possibly New England. The storm, which ravaged Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and Grand Turk Island, is blamed for the deaths of 14 people. President Clinton has declared Puerto Rico a disaster area, and UPN 38 reporter Craig Treadway looks at the local efforts underway to help those affected by Hortense and her predecessors.
Hurricane Hortense left parts of Puerto Rico shattered and underwater, with the death toll so far reaching a dozen that could go higher. Power and communication in many areas is down. In the wake of this storm, its victims are looking for a helping hand.
However, if you have loved ones in those storm-ravaged areas, especially the areas without communications, information is the most important thing to you. And here in Plymouth, in the basement of this memorial building behind me, volunteers will be working over the next few days to help get you the information you need.
Okay, one VVS and one HMJ.
This confusing-looking wall of equipment is the ham radio station of the Plymouth Civil Defense Office. Deputy Director Paul Mello has been a ham operator for a number of years. Over the next few days, he and other ham operators will work with anyone seeking information about loved ones in Puerto Rico or the storm-ravaged Carolinas.
The best thing when they call here is to make sure they have the proper information, the phone numbers, the addresses are the correct numbers, the names, and give us the best way of finding these people.
With more than 1 million licensed ham operators worldwide, they have become an important link to areas ravaged by natural disasters.
One particular storm, we sent a message down and they couldn't get a hold of them, and they sent somebody out and they found a woman that had been trapped in the house for a couple of days and nobody even knew she was there. If it wasn't for the message, who knows what would have happened.
So without conventional communication links to Puerto Rico, the Carolinas, or any other islands in the path of Hortense, information may just be a frequency away. In Plymouth, Craig Treadway, UPN 38 Prime News.
Now, for more information on how to get a message to or information about relatives in storm-ravaged areas, the numbers to call are 1-508-747-5055 or 1-508-747-5056. Now, what can we expect weather-wise? Here's Tim Kelly with the first forecast.
Hello, Roy. Even without a hurricane, it looks like we're going to get some rain. Temperatures tomorrow are only going to be in the 60s. It's a cloudy start. It probably is dry in your morning ride. Starting to sprinkle around noontime, especially toward the Cape. And then looks like we could get some pretty good downpours from Boston Point south by about 5 p.m. The ride home is going to be very slow and very wet. After that, Friday is not as rainy. And because everything is sped up, the rain's getting here early, it looks like that hurricane is going to get pushed out to sea and likely miss New England. Many more details coming up in about 15 minutes.
The Coast Guard under fire. What really happened during the attempted rescue of a capsized boat off Cape Ann? That's just ahead.
The candidates on the campaign trail with New England as their stomping ground.
And MTV fans get ready for life in the real world, Boston style. Stay with us.
The best news at 10. This is UPN 38 Prime News.
It's been 6 days now since the death of 3 fishermen killed when their boat capsized off Cape Ann. Tonight, the Coast Guard is looking for answers into the tragedy and the handling of it. UPN 38's Julia Bovey reports.
The hearing began with a moment of silence for the 3 fishermen, Captain Jeff Hutchins and crewman John Lothar and Kevin Foster. But echoing inside the minds of those present were the cries of distress that came before the men drowned.
Well, we got a mayday situation. We're right off Cape Ann. Fishing boat just crossed right in front of the barge we're towing.
Michael Simpson made the first call